It's a smaller knit group because I'm trying to build relationships between people, not just, again, have somebody down for a weekend to shoot a deer and everybody celebrate and go home. You watch them grow and you watch them grow and you watch them grow. And then about 3 weeks before the season, they just stop. They just stop coming out. And I'm not kidding. It was probably less than 10 minutes before you hear, and you just hear, they say, well, can you eat that? And I'm like, absolutely. I thought the same way until I tried one, and they're absolutely delicious. The most important thing is your attitude. If you're not having fun and showing that you're not having fun, the person that's with you is not going to be having fun. This is Jamey Shirah with the Hunter Recruitment Project, and you're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
I would rest at peace for eternity if my legacy was that I made a positive influence on the non-hunting public about what hunters are and what hunting is.
I finally got my buck on our last real day of hunting.
So a pro-hunting organization is voting against hunting. And that says anti-hunting to me.
There was a year straight where I was averaging up to 200 death threats a day.
I hugged it like I just wanted to hug a bear.
It's proven that the average steak in a grocery store touches 50 to 100 hands and machines. And we're putting that into our body.
Hey y'all, Cable Smith, host of the Lone Star Outdoors Show here.
This is Adam Weatherby.
I'm Corey Jacobson with Elk 101.
This is Christy Titus.
Hey folks, this is John Bear.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Wild Initiative, brought to you as part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective. All right, y'all, today on the podcast, I have the one and only Jamey Shirah, straight out of Georgia, here to talk a little bit about hunter recruitment and the Hunter Recruitment Project. We're going to have a good chat and see where it takes us. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's a kind of a short notice here. So I was really glad I had the gap in the schedule to put it all together.
Yeah, it was great. Baker's like, hey man, I got all these great people that I want to introduce you to. And I was like, well, I got this opening Wednesday morning. If you know anyone. He's like, oh, like 3 seconds later, he shot me your name. So I'm like, all right.
Right place, right time.
We've hunted together on multiple continents and he's a good guy and he'll talk your ear off. So just the kind of guest I need.
Yeah. We've spent a lot of time in the woods together. And yeah, we've hunted in Africa, South America, and in North America. So it's been a lot of travel with us.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So I always like to kick things off with just kind of an introduction of who you are, but especially how did you get introduced to the outdoors? Like what got you into hunting and all this?
Yeah, so give you a little background. I grew up in South Georgia on a commercial quail plantation. My grandfather was a big-time wild quail hunter. My dad as well. My dad actually thought he was Davy Crockett for a while, and literally, like, I think at one point when he was 11 or 12, left the house for like 10 days or something, and no one knew where he was. I didn't have phones or anything back then, and came back and, he had just literally left with his shotgun and his traditional bow and went out in the woods. And I don't think he had any success. I think it was like during the summer too. So it was pretty terrible timing and wasn't a lot of forethought from a 11 or 12-year-old, but he lived it, man. He wore moccasins out in the woods. He absolutely loved it. And that's where I got, my love for the outdoors from. I was, my dad was put on babysitting duty, and that was taking us to the deer stand as we were very little children, like in a stroller still. I think I was a year and a half when I went on my first deer hunt. I killed my first deer when I was 6 years old, 6-pointer. I remember I was dead asleep in the stand, and my dad woke me up, and he already had the rifle laid across his lap, kind of pointing away from me, kind of facing towards the deer. And he gave me a little elbow nudge and, hey, wake up, there's a deer. He's like, don't move, but there's a deer. And there's a 6-pointer probably like 85 yards away. And literally I kind of like woke up, picked my head up. It's like, oh, God, I see him. Like put my hand right on the rifle. I think I moved it like, 6 inches, took a shot, deer fell over backwards. And it was like, that was it. I was dialed. But yeah, I grew up same. We camped. We've camped all over the U.S. We that's what we did. If you weren't watching football or it wasn't a holiday, you were either hunting or you were getting ready to hunt, prepping the woods, putting up stands, planting food plots, et cetera, et cetera. But when I graduated high school, I went to University of Georgia, go Dogs. And that it's about four hours away from where I grew up. And to get a little tangent here, I lost Hope Scholarship, which in Georgia pays for your education. And when I went to school, it paid for everything except for housing. So it paid for all books, tuition, et cetera. And so I called my dad. I was like, hey, lost hope, what am I going to do? And he's like, well, I mean, it sounds like you either need to get a job to pay for school or you can come home and work. And
so either way, basically get a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get a job, you bum. And I knew at that point in my life, I was, obviously rebellious 18, 19-year-old. I wasn't going to go home. That was just not an option for me. So got a job working in a bar. That was a full-time job, even only working 3 or 4 days. I started managing and, all holidays, every weekend I worked and really got away from any type of outdoor activity. I was making good money and making good money was fun. And for 4 or 5 years, I really kind of stayed away from the outdoors. And I moved to Atlanta after school, opened up our first restaurant here. And I'm still in that industry. That's the primary industry that I'm in, is restaurant and bar industry. And about 5 Christmases ago, I think it was, I'd spend more and more time going home and just hanging out with my family. I missed a lot of family time for like 8 or 9 years just working. And so just hanging out with my parents, notice they're getting older. I'm getting older. Priorities start to change a little bit. And I don't know what I was doing. I think, it was kind of like the rise of when Instagram and hunting really started to kind of take foot. And so I'm starting to see all this stuff on social media. And I just kind of like lit a little fire. And I really didn't have a lot of interest in deer hunting with a rifle anymore for big bucks, because I'd done it. And, I'd never killed a monster buck, but I'd killed a lot of 140, 150 inch, 10 pointers, 11, 12, 8s, really good deer. And I'm a pretty decent shot. So, I could literally get in a pine tree 100 feet up in the air in a climbing stand and see a mile. And, it just wasn't really that much of a sport for me. But I'd gotten into fishing a lot. Turkey hunting was always still there. So I still always made time in the spring to go home for turkey hunting. Because that was kind of a special thing me and my dad had. My brother doesn't care about turkey hunting. No one else I knew really turkey hunted. My dad was that was his deal. So it's kind of my deal. But I bought a bow about, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago. And I'd had a bow in high school. My brother actually took it to college with him and sold it for money when he was in college. And gotta love brothers. And so I buy a bow and I get it all set up, get everything right. I practiced a lot. What I thought was a lot was not a whole lot. I'm sitting in the deer stand the first night with the bow. First afternoon, it's Thanksgiving, and probably 150 inch 10 pointer walks 15 yards from me, but it was just dark enough and I didn't have luminescent pins and I just couldn't see anything. And I had not felt that excitement. And I spent a ton of time scouting the stand, getting my cameras out in the woods, just trying to figure everything out. And it lit a fire in me that is only gotten apparently hotter and brighter in the last 4 or 5 years. But that lit me on fire. So that whole Christmas, I was at home, I was hunting and had shot a lot more. And I actually spot and stalked maybe the same deer. I can't be sure, but I'm fairly certain it was the same deer. And I got within about 40 yards. And spot and stalking whitetails is kind of a crazy thing. And so especially in South Georgia, they're super turned on, super crazy animals. And so I raise up, I draw, And as soon as I let go, he string jumps me. And at 40 yards, mature deers, they're gonna get moving. And I shot completely over his back, and that was it. I mean, that attempt kind of locked me in. And so, long story short, it's kind of been in my blood my whole life. It's something I've always done. I mean, I remember like when I was a little kid, our job was to clean out the dog kennels, right? So we had 45 to 55 bird dogs at any time. And so we cleaned up a lot of poop. And that was our like contribution to the family business. So, we were in it.
Awesome. So now then how did you and Baker meet? Because that then takes us into the Hunter Recruitment Project.
So there's a company, a beverage company, which some people may have heard of, called Killcliff. And Killcliff is a post workout recovery drink. And they've now gotten big into the CBD business. Joe Rogan has a flavor with them. So I helped start that company back in 2011, I think is when I came on. And so in the beginning, it was Todd, the founder. It was me, Baker, a guy named GW, a guy named Michael, who also is in with the Hunter Recruitment Project, and 2 or 3 other people. Super small company. Baker was the guy that was out on the road. I think he drove across the country 3 times in 1 year. Like he went like south, like middle, and then north, like back and forth across the country. And I got somehow handed the operations director job. And I was 23 or 4. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But my job was to make sure Baker had all the stuff that he needed to be successful at all these events he was going to. And there was like all these little CrossFit events all over the US. And I think he was at like half of them in 1 year. And my job was to make sure I shipped stuff ahead of time to these gyms, like t-shirts and all that. And then all of a sudden I was having to do production and all this. So Baker and I worked hand in hand for like 4 years. I mean, like talked every day on the phone. And it was very similar to the relationship I have with my brother, and the fact that, we just kind of rode each other's ass nonstop about everything all the time. And it just became really good friends. And obviously, I would take him hunting. We would go hunting. We went 1 year, we went bird hunting in South America. And that kind of, was really the impetus to us hunting a lot. He had hunted a little bit when he grew up, but didn't have the same kind of background that I did in hunting. And so there was a lot of stuff I was kind of helping teach him, and it was a really cool experience for both of us, I think.
So then how does that turn into the Hunter Recruitment Project? And tell us a little bit about what that is and the idea behind it.
Yeah. So the Hunter Recruitment Project is simply as stated. It's a project that we started to recruit hunters into this world. One thing that's a little bit different, or a couple things that's a little bit different. We focused on adults. There's a lot of different programs for kids out there. My thought in focusing on adults is that a kid, we can take him hunting one time, but they don't really have the wherewithal, the ability to make decisions to go back. They don't have income, they don't have jobs, or they're kids, right? And so how can I latch my wagon to someone who has the ability, has the desire, has the financial wherewithal to go hunting and to get out there and have the time off to go do these things. 2, we really focus on an immersive weekend. So it's not come down, wake up, we go sit and stand, you shoot a deer, high five, see you later. We're creating mentor-mentee relationships. So you're paired with a mentor, sometimes multiple. Everybody's on the same email thread. Everybody's on the same text thread. It's a smaller knit group because I'm trying to build relationships between people, not just, again, have somebody down for a weekend to shoot a deer and everybody celebrate and go home. The last thing is that there's a lot of additional educational components. So, we've had SEAL snipers teaching people how to shoot. We've had showing people how to hang stands, how to properly hang stands safely. We've done, some outdoor survival skill stuff. We've had Green Beret that's a medic come and teach people, how to take care of someone in the incident that you have a traumatic incident out in the outdoors. And so there's a whole lot of other hands-on educational components that isn't, again, just kind of hunt camp hanging out, skinning deer, processing deer, all those things.
That's awesome. So, is this something that you guys actively are looking for people? Or you like reach out to them? Do people find it and apply? Like, what's the whole experience for someone coming out?
Yeah. So right now, it's by nomination. So we invited an original group of people, and each one of them are nominating someone to come. And that's the way that we're building it, again, because it's really focused on relationships. And so we're trying to create a network of people that are all, that are just once removed from the group before. They're once removed. Part of that's by design. Part of that's also because of resources, right? There's only a couple of us, and there's limited amount of weekends. And so in the next couple of years, figuring out how to scale that into additional states with additional camps with additional people is going to be the way that we grow this mission even further. And at that point, it would be application based. But I always say this too. Anybody that wants to take someone hunting, you're part of the Hunter Recruitment Project. I mean, at the end of the day, like there's no, there might not be a title. We've got a guy that works for a company I met through a company called Sorinex, Taylor Quick. He lives in Mississippi. He takes people every year. He just reached out. I met him at an event like 2 years ago. He reached out, was like, "Hey man, I really love what you guys are doing. I've been taking people hunting, let me know if I can help in any way." Right. And I'm like, dude, just keep doing what you're doing. Tag us in your post. Like, let's keep this thing going. Let's show other people kind of how we do this thing. I know for me, and I'm sure it's the same most everywhere. And I think you kind of said it at the beginning, and I also read on your website, when you're getting into this hunting ordeal, I mean, it's a huge undertaking. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that are not interested in getting people into the sport because it takes resources away from them, which in my opinion is a scarcity mindset. We've got so much opportunity in the US, and there's so many avenues in which people can hunt and be successful in hunting. And, the more money we have in the sport, the more money we have for conservation, the more opportunity we have in the future. I mean, it's kind of a linear thing to me. So I don't understand why we wouldn't want to get more people into hunting. But, at the end of the day, it's kind of something that's always been a part of the way I grew up. My dad always took people hunting. We had, programs for kids at our school that could come out to the farm and, teach them how to shoot a gun, teach them how to skin a rabbit, teach them how to shoot clays, teach them, just very basic, outdoor stuff. And so for me, it's kind of been a calling, and I was taking people hunting a couple of years ago, and Baker and I were having people reach out, just kind of out of the blue. "Hey man, I saw you here. What kind of bow do you use? I'd like to get into bow hunting. What do you, what camo? Why this? Why that?" And I started realizing like all these questions are from people that actually don't hunt at all. Mm-hmm. And so, let me not only take a lot of time and attention with these people and actually answer their questions thoroughly and say, "Hey, you got a second to jump on the phone, or here's 8 links, or here's a great article from, whatever. Here's Dudley's School of Knock." I think I've sent that thing out like 40 times to people that are trying to get into bow hunting. I'm like, follow this 12-week program. You will be able to shoot a bow accurately if you follow it to the T. I still do it to this day. And so, as it just developed, I don't honestly remember the exact kind of inception point, but we both were sitting there. We're like, "Hey man, like, I think this is," I was really searching for what can my value add be to the outdoor network. Right. I have full-time job. I'm kind of sucked into that whole world. How do I add value to the brands and the companies that are, being in conservation, and how do I add value back to them? And my only thought is, hey, put more people in the woods.
I get so frustrated because, I mean, you touched on it. There's so many people out there with that scarcity mindset, and that, you know, they're just like, we're going down with the ship, you know, we're going to, it drives me nuts, because those are then also the same people that are posting the most offensive things. They're driving people away from hunting, and it kills me on a daily basis. And I understand, like, we need to some extent, we need to be careful with how we introduce people to hunting and how they're brought in, and that they're taught to do things in a legal and ethical manner. Because you know, so often it's really easy just to be like, oh yeah, everyone needs to go hunting, go get your hunter's safety and get out in the woods. It's like, that's a terrible idea for a lot of people.
100%.
I mean,
if you've had no experience handling firearms or anything, or being in the woods, I mean, you freaking roll your ankle and break your ankle out in the middle of the woods, and you literally have zero survival experience. You don't even understand basics of how to fix that. Like, you're in a pretty bad position right off the rip, and it happens all the time.
Or you got someone walking through the woods with a chambered round and the finger on the trigger and the safety off, and who knows?
Somebody's got a strutter on their head.
Oh dear heavens! I don't even want to talk about those things, man. I'm like, do what you will, man. Turkey hunting, you would never think it, but I swear, turkey hunting has to be like the most dangerous form of hunting there is. You can
public land turkey hunting is pretty aggressive.
I'm like, man, give me a trad bow and a grizzly bear before you send me public land turkey hunting.
Yeah, I've been in North Georgia public land a good bit, and I have had people push in and cut me off on a bird gobbling that I had coming to me, and I just, you know, hey man, I can literally see you walking through the woods. I'm right here, you know, I'll wave at them. There's, you know, wave back with one finger, you know, and I'm like, all right, here we go.
Oh my gosh. Turkey hunters are crazy people. I'll tell you, the people that are like, that's their thing. Like, and trust me, and I say this because one of my best buddies, I know we are. Yeah. Y'all are wild, man. One of my best buddies is he's one of you crazy people, and I enjoy it. And I never thought I would enjoy it as much as I did.
Yep.
Or as I do. But yeah, y'all are a special breed. I gotta say, like, I don't know what it is. I don't either. I mean, I definitely know a major component of it is the interactivity, right? I mean, just like elk hunting, like, you call an animal response, the hunt, you know, in a sense is on, right? Then you're trying to understand what are all the other variables that are in front of me. I mean, it's a chess match, right? Whitetail hunting is a lot of a chess match, but then it's a lot of just luck. You know, there just has to, especially bow hunting, you just got to decide that he's going to come that way that time. And you can increase your luck with a lot of preparation, but turkey hunting, man, they are just, one day they go over here, one day they go over there, one day they gobble, one day they don't, one day, I mean, it's just, there is no pattern, it seems. And so you're just looking at all these different variables. You're trying to understand, you know, what time of day it is, how much water, how much rain has there been, where are they going? Are they going to food? Are they going to water? Do they have hens? How many hens? You know, can you cut them off? Can you get it? And it's just, it's run and gun. I mean, I love it. Well, I'll tell you, like, the people listening probably heard me tell this story a bunch of times, but like my turkey hunting experience has been just the goofiest, like, shit show, to where like I spent a couple of years, like, you know, going out, like 2 years going out and like fully camoed or in the blind and, you know, doing the calling and like the quote unquote proper way to turkey hunt. And I'll tell you, only two turkeys I've shot. I got, I guess it would have been last year. I got my 2 turkeys, spring season in California. One time I was wearing a pair of board short or a pair of gym shorts, some Crocs, and I think I put on a t-shirt right after I shot them.
Yeah.
Like, I just got word there were turkeys in the driveway. I went up, I knew exactly where they were going because I'd watched them several prior days. Ran 2 properties over, posted up behind a tree and shot him. The other one I was in a bright red shirt, and a pair of board shorts and flip flops, and Elmer fudded the hell out of that thing. But
you said something that's very important though. That's how you get successful at turkey hunting is by scouting and watching where they're going and watching what they're doing and spending time out there, because you knew where those birds are going. You get in front of them, you cut them off. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like if it's been really dry and you know that it's, mid-morning, they're off the hens and they're gobbling and they're not coming to you, but they're going towards a water source. Shut up. Run 100 yards backwards, run 100 yards to your left, and run 200 yards down and try to get in front of them and catch them coming there. Because I don't know, turkey hunting is either the easiest thing that you've ever done or it's impossible. You either sitting there, you're set up, you got you're set up, you're ready to go. You call a few times, bird flies down right in front of you, boom, game over. It's like, wow, well, that was pretty easy. But then the other 45 times that you go, they fly down the other way and they go the other way and they just don't even pay you any attention. They're just gobbling, just kind of walking around. You're like, God.
Well, and I mean, you can again be doing everything right, but like you said, if you're not in the spot where the turkeys are, it's just not going to happen. But if you know exactly where the turkeys are going to be, you can get away with a lot more if they're feeding along and you're able to post up. But it's
for sure.
Yeah, I've had those experiences where my first year I could get every hen in a damn mile radius to come out to me. Yeah. And I'd get them to hang out and chill. And they didn't even give a crap about me. Like, it got to the point where it's so ridiculous. I'm like, all right, screw this. And I'd like stand up and go to move spots or something. They'd look at me and be like, and just keep going back to feeding. Mm-hmm. Like, you guys suck. And then
again, they're either the smartest animal out there or they're the dumbest. I don't know. It just depends what day it is. I don't really get that, but I mean, I've had birds, have my trigger glove off, my trigger hand, and reach to grab a call or something. And immediately, they're 65, 70 yards away and they just zone in like boom. You're like, oh God, I'm spotted. They take off. And I've had birds, again, no mask on, no gloves, no nothing, sitting there kind of giving up, for the morning. And all of a sudden 10 yards behind you, they just sound off and they step right out. And you just boom. It's like, wait, what? How did that happen? But
that was like one of my favorite moments was I'm out in my backyard. I'm shooting my bow. I'm just practicing for season, whatever. I can't remember. It was either like a month before or a month after turkey season at that point, but I'm just out, just out tuning my bow. And I kind of catch out of the corner of my eye, I see this movement. I'm like, oh, dang, the chickens got out again. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, I loose my shot and then I look and I'm like, holy shit. There's a couple of Tom, a couple of Jakes. There's like a whole, like, I swear there's probably like 10 or 12 turkeys just walked right in front of my target and like started feeding around in front of my target. And I'm sons of bitches. Like,
they know. They're like, you can't.
Every time.
I don't know.
Every time. Yeah. It was just like, and if I'd waited another second to release that arrow, they would have been walking right in front of it and I would have had to let down. Like, it was just the most.
It's like in South Georgia, we plant a ton of peanuts. Right. And so during the summer, it's an incredible source of nutrients for deer, high in protein and all that. And these deer walk out and just feed on it all afternoon. And you'll see these, growing deer, but you can tell they're 4, 5, 6-year-old. And, they've only got, 4 or 5 inches of velvet, but they're, outside their shoulders, like got 8, 10 points, they're going to be monsters. And you watch them grow and you watch them grow and you watch them grow. And then about 3 weeks before the season, they just stop. They just stop coming out, and it's they're there, they're in the area, and they just disappear, and you're like, and you just see them grow, all the way from like little 2 forks to, probably especially with velvet, there's like looks like it's a 200-inch deer. You're like but anyways, yeah, it's they know what's up. They know when people start poking around in the woods.
So man, hopping back to the hunter recruitment stuff, You mentioned one of the big things for people is just take folks out, and I know a lot of the time we're kind of talking about this beforehand. One of the critical things, honestly, for getting someone out there is two things. It's making it fun and making it successful and finding ways to do that. So say somebody's looking to bring someone out, like they've got a buddy that is interested in hunting or coworker or whatever. What are some of the critical things to keep in mind, and maybe some suggestions for somebody that's taking someone out for the first time? Maybe it's their first time bringing someone with them even.
Yeah, for sure. You said two very important things, and that's kind of our minimum criteria for success, right? Is for everybody to have fun and for everybody to get success in the field. And we're at 100% success so far. Obviously, that probably won't stand, but it's been a great start. I would say that the most important thing is your attitude. And what I mean by that is, if you're not having fun and showing that you're not having fun, the person that's with you is not going to be having fun. If you show that you're having fun and, when they're walking and stepping on every stick in the road, that you don't turn around and be like, hey, come on, man, be quiet. Like, you're just like, hey, stop for a second here. Do you notice, like, when you're walking, you're stepping on these sticks, right? To someone that's never hunted, literally every little piece of information is new to them, right? So you can, stop and say, hey, look at that mushroom. That's a morel. Like, you can eat that. It's delicious. Oh, watch out. There's a snake or whatever. Like, that's poison ivy. Don't step there. Hey, when you're walking, try not to walk in the leaves. Walking, here. I mean, it's just like every little tiny thing. This is a scrape. This is what the scrape means. This is what the deer do. They forget that they're not seeing animals at that point, right? They're just, first of all, they're just happy to be out there. And anytime you're outdoors, for me at least, it's an awesome experience. And so your attitude towards what's going on, and I think too, being honest up front, like if you're in a very low target environment, like you just don't have a lot of deer, I would say to the person that I'm taking, hey, I've hunted 5 years in a row here. I've killed 3 deer. It's really difficult, but you've had some of the venison that I've shared with you. You know how rewarding it can be, et cetera, right? You just kind of preface them to not, think that they're going to sit down and within 10 minutes, the deer is going to walk out and they're going to shoot it. But I think those two things, keeping it fun. And then one last thing, don't hunt too long, especially for younger people. You can't sit till lunchtime. Hour and a half to 2 hours is kind of, especially for younger people, hour and a half to 2 hours is kind of a max attention span. And new hunters are a lot like young kids, right? They haven't done it. They haven't experienced it. They haven't sat in a lock on in 0 degree weather with a 20-mile-an-hour wind for 4 or 5 hours, moving just enough to get something to eat and get something to drink. So I would say those 3 things.
Well, it's so critical that you're able to read people too. Like,
absolutely.
You're able to tell because if somebody's engaged and understanding the situation, if you're sitting in a blind versus sitting in a tree stand in 0 degree weather and unable to move, you can probably get away with a little bit longer, say in a blind than you can, or if you're walking through the woods and, it's your attitude. I don't think that's brought up enough, is your attitude is so critical, like you were saying, because, say you're sitting in a blind, you're hunting turkey with someone and the two of you are sitting there and you are just infuriated because you're in your primo spot with your buddy. You're like, yeah, dude, I'm going to show him how badass turkey hunting is because I'm a turkey crazy person. Yep. And I'm, it's like, oh, this is my primo spot. Where, I got some big old toms on the trail cams. This is going to be primo. And then all of a sudden,
100% success, 100% chance of success.
Exactly. All of a sudden, all you're getting are like these like little teeny jakes and a couple of hens. And you're just like, what the hell is going on? And you're getting all irritated, but they're sitting there. They're like, they've never been turkey hunting.
Right.
They're like, holy crap, that bird just fucking came in. Like, they're stoked on seeing a hen. And you're like, what is this garbage the whole time? Or they're seeing a jake there and, maybe the jake fans up a little bit and they're like, holy shit, that's so cool. Yeah. And if you're not able to read that on them and you're sitting there getting irritated, they're going they're going to feel like they're missing out on something because you're not seeing those, when in all reality, they're having the time of their life. And that's such a critical thing. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. The only time that I show frustration in hunting with people are on decisions that I made for the hunt for them. And generally, only reason why I'm even showing that I'm frustrated is to provide an educational component, right? Mm-hmm. Man, we shouldn't have sat here, because I knew the wind wasn't going to be perfect. I knew that we should have done this. This is why we should have done this. And the whole time they're going, okay, so we made a mistake. It's not that big of a deal. Like, this is what we need to do different next time. And you're educating them. And again, someone that's never been hunting, I find a lot of times hasn't spent a ton of time just outdoors in general as well. And so there's an unending supply of things that you can talk about with the woods, right? What kind of bird is that? Why is that bird doing that? What kind of tree is that? What is it's just like, all right, look at this field. You see how this field's laid out. You see where this ditch comes through. You see where this water source is. You see where this looks like a funnel. You see where this, these peanuts are planted. And you just start talking about all the components of how the animals are going to move through the area. And you're just educating them constantly on hunting. And that's something that, my dad, when I was little, always was educating us. Everything was a test, always, right? In a fun way. Like it wasn't like a bad deal, but like when we were little and we would drive on his knee, he would tickle us while we were driving to make us focus on the driving, not on the tickling, to not, to make sure we weren't worried about distractions when we were driving, that we could retain focus. He would play a game when we'd be riding on the tractor for like 8 hours, in the afternoon. Deer always came out in the field, even though if you're on a tractor. And every time that we spotted the deer before him, he would give us $50.
Damn.
Right. Okay. Because we never spotted the deer before him. The only time we did,
is he let you.
Yeah. He was like, oh, what's that over there? Like, oh, there's a deer. You didn't see it. He's like, no, I didn't see it. We would go into the woods and he would, this is before cell phones or anything, right? We would go down deep in the woods and he would say, all right, take us back to the truck, right? Always be aware of your surroundings. Always have situational awareness. Understand what's going on around you. That's a huge one. Situational awareness in the woods is kind of a major component when it comes to not getting injured or hurting yourself or getting lost or stuck out in the woods. And I got stuck out in the woods 2 years ago on a ridge because we were chasing elk and went down to this deep, dark hole. By the time we came out, it was dark and we couldn't find the trail out of there. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. I knew better. Luckily we had enough stuff in our packs that it wasn't that big of a deal, except for we almost got charged by a grizzly bear, which was quite terrifying without any firearms. It was. I'm downplaying a little bit. That's pretty terrifying. Definitely the closest I've ever been to a bear in public or in the wild. I've never hunted bear before, so it was. I think my heart's speeding up just thinking about it. My hands are sweating.
So I kind of want to pause for a second and hear this whole bear story right now. Like I want to hear about it.
I guess it was 2 elk seasons ago. A buddy of mine, Caleb Copeland, he owns and runs Copeland Creative. They do a ton of outdoor digital content work. They're some of the best in the business, period. Based here in Georgia. And one of his guys, Ryer, and I were hunting elk. And we were in Idaho. It was the 3rd year in a row I'd been to Idaho and struck out all 3 times. And we finally found the elk on day 5. We had 6 days. We finally found them. And it was in the deepest, darkest, thickest, gnarliest stuff to the point where we were within 40 yards of elk, probably, 10 times, and just not even remotely a shot opportunity. Like, so you couldn't even see him. You see like a little brown patch, like move through the woods, I'm sitting there clipped in with my bow, just turning around. Like, I don't know what I'm going to, I can't do anything right now. And then you're trying to back out and work around while they stay and call. So anyways, we play cat and mouse basically from sunup to sundown. There was maybe an hour and a half where they weren't bugling. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, aside from not shooting an elk. But we're sitting up on this ridge and the sun's starting to get low. We know we probably got about an hour left. And one just sounds off probably 150 yards below us. Another one, there's 3 bulls down there. You can hear stuff just going nuts. It's just stuff getting
turning
shredded.
into war zone.
Oh yeah. And we're like, it's on. Like, we don't even have to call because they're just going after it. So we start going down the space. And when I say deep, dark, and nasty, you could move 10 feet every 10 minutes. Like, it was just all of these deadfalls and just, terrible. But I'm in pretty good shape. I'm going to get after it, whatever. Well, of course, we get right there. It's too dark. They flag off and run up this hill. We see these 3 bulls that are monsters. A guy killed one the next morning in that exact same area, sitting in the little grass field at the base. That was a 7x6 monster, like 370, 380 or something like that. Anyways, we're like, damn, that sucks. But we got our maps, we got Onyx, we're cool. We get back up and we're like kind of halfway down the mountain and our trucks are there. Caleb rolls his ankle. So we're like, oh no, like now things have changed. So we know that going down that way is pretty bad. We had set a bike, an e-bike out on a trail off the back that was supposed to be just a super easy trail. Okay. We go to that trailhead on the map and we're sitting there down off this mountain and there's nothing. We can't find it. I bushwhack around for like an hour in the dark. It's so thick that I can't actually walk. I'm just like laying on top of bushes and stuff, like thinking that, hey, any second I'm just going to go off a cliff. So we back out and it's just too sketchy. We're like, man, it was very steep where we were. And so we got one of those like Sitka tarps, like, whatever. We get that set up. We knew it was going to get cold that night. But the good thing was we had perfect cell service. And so we set this tarp up, wind starts kicking up real bad. We look at the forecast. Of course, it goes from being like 40 that night to 21 or something like that with a 30 mile an hour wind. So we've been hiking all day. We basically got like base layer and like a mid layer in our pack, and that's it. But we got this tarp. We get a little fire set up going. We're out of water. We don't have any food. We're just like, this is shitty. This sucks. But, it's part of it. Whatever. It's not that big of a deal. So we get like this good little spot. It's like kind of on the backside of this little outcropping so that the wind's kind of off of us. I lay the tarp down in the wind side, all that stuff. Little fire kind of inside the tent, retain some heat. It's not that bad. Well, after like an hour of sitting there, I hear Ryer over here just like crinkling in his backpack. And I'm like, what are you doing over here? And then I literally just smell tuna. And I'm like, what up? I'm like, dude, you got food? Like, you're not sharing anything? Not even thinking about like maybe fish during, time that bears are coming out of hibernation. It's probably not the best thing to open with this type of wind because it's just gonna, go
spread everywhere. Yeah.
It probably, and I'm not kidding, it was probably less than 10 minutes before you hear, and you just hear, and Ryer looks at me and goes, man, it's really weird that these elk are feeding up here at nighttime. And I go, bro, that's not an elk. I said, I don't know what that is, but it's not an elk. And so Caleb's asleep. So we wake him up and, he's like, what? I'm like, I think there's a bear. He's like, hey, no bear, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a bear. Never seen one in the wild, but I'm pretty sure it's a bear. And
I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, and
I've seen him at a distance, but never up close. Yeah. And then you hear just the blowing, and he's trying to clear his nose out and smell. And I was like, oh God. So we're like up on this little drop off, so we can't see down, and everyone's too scared to get up and look down this hill. Finally, it gets too close to the point where Ryer kind of sits up and shines his flashlight, immediately cuts it off and turns and goes, big bear, big bear, big bear, big bear. And we're like, oh God. So everybody stands up. I had this big pine bough that I took and just threw it on top of the fire and lit it on top of the fire and stood up with it. And everybody stood up and started clapping, started making all this noise. And he takes about 3 steps forward. And I swear to God, his head was like 2 feet wide. I mean, it was, I saw his head and I went into adrenaline dump, like lockdown mode, like, oh my God, like pull my knife out. Like I'm going to do something with that. And I have an arrow in the other hand. We're just like yelling at this. And he just walks up and he kind of like turns his head and puts his shoulder to us. And from, I don't really know, but that's usually a bad sign. And he starts circling us. And I'm thinking at any second, he's just going to step in and start swiping. Yeah. And he just circled about 45 degrees, kind of looked and just turned and walked off. We don't know where he went because we never heard him like bound off or anything. And we could hear him walking around. So needless to say, we didn't sleep at all that night. I think I slept like 40 minutes, but the next morning, we get up and we're walking down to the trail and we walk by what it was his den. You could see clearly animal had been in and out of there. The trail went right by it. And we get down to
how far away from that was your camp? The den to your camp.
Yeah. 40 yards maybe.
So like right there. Like,
oh yeah, it was on the other side of the outcropping.
It was on that. I missed that part. Like, oh dear Lord. Okay.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. And there was just a little path, like, cause it was like kind of it was almost vertical. I mean, it's probably like 80 degree, like down. And there was just a little path. You could see his tracks where he came out and walked around. And it was, I will never forget any second of that. It was intense, but it was also pretty awesome. And then we get down, we're like, oh God, we got to get something to eat. We got to get some breakfast. We see the guy that kills that elk, like right down the mountain that next morning. I mean, probably, we could see where he was from where we were, this monster, and he's in there eating breakfast. And we're just like, man, you gotta be shitting me. And then I pull up, like, when you pull your phone up, Apple News pops up or something. I don't remember how I saw it, but a grizzly had attacked someone. And we didn't have any, we were not even really paying attention to anything all day. A grizzly had attacked someone that day, like less than 20 miles from where we were, north of us. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, oh, absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But it was incredible. It was intense. Oh man. Don't want to do it again, but it was intense.
Knock on wood. I've yet to have any bear encounters in the woods. Hopefully I will have one next time I go out bear hunting, but exactly. I've not had any grizzly encounters, but I'll tell you, when I was hunting in 2019 here in Montana, there was like 7 grizzly attacks or something just stupid. There's like 5 or 7 of them. And it was just like one after another. And you just kept hearing about them. And my whole family is like sending me these articles like, are you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm fine.
What about the woman? Did you see that video on Instagram of that woman that goes in there and punches that bear in California?
Oh, the one her dog. It was like that kind of cinnamon looking. Yeah, it's like that cinnamon looking brown bear hops up. It's got its cubs on the wall, and
like
oh my gosh, that's been making its rounds. I was like, damn, I'm a little impressed.
I wouldn't do that. I'm sorry.
I do not think I would have had the balls to have done that.
No.
I mean, some women and their toy dogs, man.
I know. God.
I mean, that first one, like, what was like that big old dog, and then like there's like 2 other like teeny little ones, like little toy dogs, and I was like, that little toy dog that you just hear grab and like pick up and run off with. I mean, man, California, Los Angeles women and their toy dogs. I'll tell you what. Oh man.
Yeah, y'all have a lot of bear and cat encounters in California.
So no more of that y'all stuff. I'm not included in that anymore. Anymore. My driver's license says Montana on it. Okay. I'm no longer in California.
Fair enough. Those Californias.
Exactly. Those people. What do you mean by those people?
People that live in California.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear Lord. It is. I mean, they just keep removing any ability to hunt predators out there. They got rid of the bobcats. You can't hunt mountain lions. You can't bait bears or hunt them or hunt them with dogs anymore. And there's no spring season for bears. I don't know. I've been told different things. I've been told by some people that we pretty much almost never reach our quota for bears every year. And then been told by a lot of people that they often would reach quota for bears. And I don't know how it is. Cause with the bear hunting, it's not a draw. You can, as long as you've got a license, you can buy a tag. They're not super expensive as a resident. And until the quota is reached, as many people as want effectively can hunt it. And I'm not sure. Let's just say I've never seen bear tags sell out in the time that I was a resident there. But the mountain lions get aggressive. The bears get it. It affects our ungulate populations. It's insane out there. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, that's probably a whole other conversation for another day. But the whole predator prey relationship deal seems to be kind of misunderstood a little bit. But where I'm from, no one ever hunted bears. I never even knew that was a thing.
Do you guys really have bear populations in Georgia?
Massive black bears in North Georgia.
Georgia.
Yeah, so North Georgia, Northeast Georgia, Eastern Tennessee, Western Carolina, Western South Carolina. You've got like world record black bears because they don't hibernate and they're agriculture bears. So they eat corn all fall. They don't hibernate, so they eat all year round. And you've got some, 650, 700-pound black bears, like a good black bear. Like they're up in the 800s. And I don't know what the top end is, but they are massive black bears. My buddy lives in LJ, and he's got a family that just like comes up in his backyard all the time, and he sees them. He's like, I see like 20 bears a week walking around. And we've actually got bears in South Georgia, specifically Southeast Georgia, Florida bears. And we had a piece of property that had a couple bears on it. And our new piece of property, we don't know if we have bears because we haven't been able to see the tracks, but our feeders keep getting knocked over and opened. And it is connected. There's about 40,000 contiguous acres from landowners, and a lot of that is kind of swampy, dense hunting land. So we haven't seen any tracks around it, so we don't really know. But my dad's like, I think you got a bar in here, eating up your feed. I'm like, that'd be cool.
That would be really cool.
They've got them in Middle Georgia now too. Black bears, they're kind of growing.
Do they not hibernate just because of it stays generally warm year round?
Yep.
So you don't get that really heavy.
Yeah. It gets, North Georgia gets obviously a lot colder than South Georgia, but you'll have probably a total of a week in kind of below freezing, in middle of North Georgia, maybe 2 weeks. South Georgia, you have a couple days that it gets below freezing. Our cold's definitely different because it's 100% humidity cold, and it's like 40 degrees outside and you're freezing to death. Whereas out west, it's like 20 degrees and you got like a little fleece on. You're like, it feels great.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it just doesn't get cold enough. And like I said, it's massive agricultural, all around all of Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. It's all agricultural. So these bears, the deer, everything, it's just like full blown. I would say it's like, what a Wisconsin or like a Kansas deer looks like compared to like an average whitetail.
Yeah.
It's the same as like an average black bear and these black bears. They're just like swole up, like waddle around.
I'm going to start doing some black bear research for the South now, man. That's
Western North Carolina is a hot spot for big bears.
Huh.
And I was saying, like, I've never didn't know anyone that hunted bears, never thought about hunting bears. My dad and one of his buddies, I think, went on a grizzly hunt back in the 70s and had success there. His buddy did. But it was just kind of, I never really thought about it. And then I ate bear. I don't know if you know who the Rivets are, John and Jen Rivet out of Canada, like kind of preeminent bear people.
Yeah.
And she made some bear stew, and like absolutely unbelievably delicious. And I was like, man, I just never even thought. And that like made this little switch go off my head. Like, wait, so I can kill one animal that's like massive and have all this meat for a long time. And it's really good, especially on like tacos and stuff, which I'm a big taco guy. And it kind of changed my whole opinion on this. And it's funny because that's a lot of the questions being in Atlanta. A lot of the questions I get, anytime I put a post up or show, killing an animal, people are like,
well, do you eat it?
Yeah. I'm like, yes. Do you see any of the other stuff I put up? Because a lot of the meat that I put up is either, beef or venison or, chicken or whatever. And, it's always kind of a little bit of a realization for people when they when they seek to understand before seeking to be understood, right? When they start by asking questions instead of telling you what their opinions are on it. And for me, I think that's the only way that we have a useful conversation. But they say, well, can you eat that? And I'm like, absolutely. They're like, oh man, I don't think I could ever kill a bear. Like, they're whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I thought the same way until I tried one, and they're absolutely delicious. But I do a lot of meat sharing here in Atlanta. That's another great way to recruit hunters, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Sharing venison. I mean, I have friends over all the time, and I take back straps and sous vide them with there's this guy called the Flip Flop sauce out of California.
He's a good buddy of mine. He just moved to Bozeman. Yeah. Andy.
I didn't know Andy moved to Bozeman.
Yeah. Yeah. He's actually,
nice.
I think got back into town yesterday. He's been out of town
Nice.
I'm supposed to sit down with him probably sometime next week, and we're going to lay down an episode, but yeah, he's been a buddy of mine for a long time.
He's awesome, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know what's in that magic sauce he makes, but it is, I've eaten venison my whole life. I've always liked it. Now it's like, all right, we got to ration out these back straps and these sirloins and it's chucked because like, if not, I'm just going to eat them all in a week, man. You sous vide in that sauce with a little bit of red wine for like 2 or 3 hours, and then literally just put it in a cast iron for 45 seconds on either side. It is the best.
That is the only way I do back straps. It does not matter what in the sous vide with, and make a little out of the drippings, make a little cream sauce or something, and then sear it in that cat, dude. You're my soulmate here with this shit. Like, it's the only way I do it.
I introduced my fiance. She'd never eaten deer. They never hunted or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, I get home and I see my little paper wrapped up, whole back strap thawing out, and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I just want some tonight. I'm like, all right, cool. And it's a power meal, man. And so sharing that, and obviously, if that's too technical, get some sausage made. I don't know anyone that doesn't like sausage.
Oh yeah.
And you feed people venison sausage and they're like, oh, okay, this clicks now. This makes sense.
I roll out with those cheddar jalapeno brats. That is like the winning.
Yes.
Like it is. Yes. You could take garbage care of your deer in the field, and as long as you turn them into cheddar jalapeno brats, everyone will gobble that stuff up. Like Absolutely. It is just. Oh my gosh! I'll tell you though, I know a lot of people that swear by bear meat, a lot of people over venison. And I'm talking like people that hunt bear regularly know how to take care of it because it's a little tricky in the field because of the fat.
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing I've ever had that is incredible is just canned bear meat.
All right.
Like, and
you're not the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah. Ryan and
Like
Hillary
in a jar.
Lampers. Yeah, in a jar. Ryan and Hillary Lampers, Stealthy Hunter here in Three Forks, Montana. They're the ones that introduced me to this, and it looks like dog food. You'll be like, it's like dog food and water is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it tastes absolutely incredible. And it's the best way to preserve it. It lasts forever. You jar it up in mason jars. And so like, look into that. I think they may have instructions for that. I'll have to look that up and see. But the canned bear meat is like the jam.
So I'll try anything once. And I think the Rivets actually had some canned bear meat at that event that I was at where I ate bear the first time. And I think I remember seeing it and like kind of being like, I'm not really sure that's what I want. And then by the time I was like, yeah, I'll try it, it was gone because people were like freaking ravenous, like sucking it down. I was like, oh, well, damn. So what's the flavor profile? What is the
it's been a while since I've had
What's
it.
The process?
Like, I do not trust myself to describe the process or everything. I'm gonna look and see if I can find their like method for canning bear meat.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've done a podcast on it or something.
For sure.
They run the Hunt Harvest Health podcast, and they're big into the locavore movement and wild game and growing their own vegetables and stuff. And it's something special. I know them and Brian Call have done some stuff on canning bear meat. So I'll have to find that. I'll post a link up on the show notes page. I'll shoot it over to you as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I that bear that I ate was just braised with, deep flavor, like, your mirepoix, celery, carrots, onions, and just put on a Traeger and cooked down. And it was like pulled pork, except for pulled bear. That was phenomenal.
I'll have to send you the episode I did with Ryan recently, just at the beginning of bear season, because that's one of the things we talked about, a lot of the different ways to basically make bear super edible and things you can do with it, ways to take care of it in the field. You'll probably get a kick out of that episode. And one of the cool things about bear is with that fat, you can render it down in the field. And like, so, you take your bear, you still maybe got an evening out, as you're packing out. And it's one of the best meals you can have is you take that bear heart and you slice it up, you render down some of that fat, and that's like your dinner for the night. That's oh man.
Absolutely. Deer heart tacos are absolutely phenomenal.
I'm thinking this weekend I'm gonna have to make some elk heart tacos for the young lady that's coming into town for a visit. So I think that is going to be the I've got the back straps already marinating in the sous vide. Or not in the sous vide yet, but I've got them marinating in the fridge, ready to go for dinner tomorrow night. So gonna throw those in the sous vide.
Absolutely.
Oh man, you're speaking my language here for that, but
it's early for you, but it's almost lunch for me. I'm starting to get a little hungry.
I did not have breakfast this morning, and so I'm like, my mouth is watering thinking about it. Like, oh man. It's definitely going to be a wild game lunch today. I'll have to thaw out some. Maybe I'll do like a breakfast for lunch thing. I'll thaw out some of my breakfast sausage and do like some eggs, and that sounds like a good lunch to me.
Dude, one of my favorites is just take ground venison, brown it with some onions, salt, pepper, whatever seasonings you want. Put like in a skillet, and then put 3 little holes. Drop your eggs in there. And then fold them in and cook it in. That bowl right there, it's like Action Jackson all up in your mouth. It's
nice.
It's super easy and delicious. It takes 5 minutes to cook, so super healthy.
Oh man, gosh, I think we're just killing ourselves right here with this.
Yeah, I know. So, all right, new topic.
Man, yeah. So anything but discussing wild game cooking. I'm actually gonna start winding this down with a question here. Back to the hunter recruitment from the other perspective. Now, say you're somebody that you're like, man, I want to get into hunting. And like when I started, like I said, I was like in the middle of Los Angeles. I didn't have anyone to reach out to. I was finally lucky enough to meet a coworker who got me a little more invested. But a lot of people just don't have that option. And so say somebody does want to get in, like, they're like, man, I would love to be able to do something like that, to effectively get mentored. What recommendations would you have for someone to go around that?
So a couple. First and foremost, you got to take what you got. And luckily nowadays there are more resources online than there have ever been. And there's more stuff coming online every single day. I hunted a lot when I was little. Like I said, I rifle hunted a lot. And so I didn't understand a lot of the intricacies of whitetail hunting and turkey hunting. And, 5 years ago, I just started watching YouTube. I just literally started watching everything, consuming all the information I could, try to figure out what are the common themes that everybody's saying, looking at, the land that I hunt, how I can apply that to that land, talking with my dad, talking with people that I know that hunt, and really spending a lot of time trying to understand the educational components before really putting myself out there. I want to make sure that I can be successful before I start trying to be a coach. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to coach yourself before you really want to start trying to coach other people. And unfortunately, there are a lot of resources out there that are coaches that don't really know themselves. And so that's one kind of warning, is be careful with who you're paying attention to. But I mentioned his name before, John Dudley. If you're trying to hunt whitetails, obviously he's in Iowa. So those deer operate a certain way. Your area deer may operate a different way, but a lot of the information that he gives you can distill out basics in what he's doing and how to set up, your stand, how to set up, what equipment to use, what to wear, when to hunt, looking at the moon, looking at the wind, looking at food, all those different components. Just pay attention to all that stuff and start learning as much as you can. I would say it would not be a wise direction to try and ask somebody to go hunting if you haven't put in any work at all on the back end to understand anything about what you're getting into. I think it's kind of a cheap way to get into it. And it really puts a bad taste in people's mouths when hey, I've never hunted before, don't know anything about it, can I come hunting with you? It's like, okay, well, how about this? Let's learn these basics before we go sit in a stand with a gun in our hands. Like I said, I did shoot my first deer when I was 6, but I had to hunt 3 or 4 years with my dad, and I can remember being 4 or 5 years old and seeing deer and be like, oh, Dad, no, let me shoot one. And say, no, not yet, not until you're 6. That's a different experience. But the beautiful thing about where we hold the Hunter Recruitment Project is there a lot of like box blinds, right? So you have a lot of visibility. So you can see deer in all these different areas and you can watch them. You can watch how they move. You can watch what they do. You can watch their body language. And so you use all those opportunities as a way to educate the person sitting with you. And the first deer they see, they're reaching for their gun. And it's like, hold on, that deer's 500 yards away. We're probably not going to attempt that shot right here. But that would be the biggest thing is make yourself at least aware of concepts, make yourself aware of, where to shoot a deer, how to use your weapon, how to use your bow, get yourself some gear that can sustain you when you're hunting. Obviously, you don't got to have top of the line stuff. I hunted literally my whole life with like duck boots, which only keep your feet hot when it's hot and keep them cold when it's cold. And blue jeans and like a camouflage fleece. That's basically, up until, some of these new companies have come out in the last kind of 10 years, that's all there was. There just wasn't a lot of stuff. Wool, he wore a lot of wool, but, I think that if you're going to dedicate yourself to taking the life of an animal, you need to be damn serious about it. And you can't be flippant, and you can't, come in without really putting your focus towards it, or it's somewhat disrespectful in my opinion. And I'd say that's kind of from the opposite side, prepare yourself. I mean, it's just like any other thing that you're going to do, right? I mean, if you're going to participate in a triathlon, you probably ought to practice. You probably ought to learn how to ride the bike. You probably ought to learn how to, provide yourself with the proper nutrition, learn how to swim, right? You're going to go out in the woods in a very dangerous sport, right? People don't think deer hunting, sitting in a stand with a rifle is very dangerous. You're not going to know the ins and outs of everything, but take the time to focus on learning before you put yourself in that situation.
Awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate you on such short notice, joining me and hopping on. This was a fun conversation. Had a good time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. It's a great conversation. Nice break to a Wednesday. Get to actually talk about something that I'm super passionate about.
There we go. All right, y'all, that'll do it for this episode of The Wild Initiative. Make sure to check out the show notes page at thewildinitiative.com. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. Big thank you to Jamey for hopping on with me on such short notice. Got a pretty busy week coming up, so was glad we were able to get some time in. Make sure you check out the Hunter Recruitment Project, y'all, and make sure maybe this year find an opportunity to introduce someone to the outdoors, introduce someone to hunting, fishing, whatever that may be. Reach out to your friends that have shown interest and take that time to get someone new into the outdoors. But y'all, that'll do it for this week. Looking forward to next time. But until then, I hope this podcast inspired you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.